I'm going to record on this computer. I had trouble from the cloud getting that to Kelsey. Okay, and then before we go to our featured topic presenters, we have one of our native climate teammates that has an update. Kyle, do you want to let us know what you're updating us on and go ahead and do that, please?
Sure, y'all. Hey, can everybody hear me pretty well?
Yes.
Good. I am currently on the East Coast, and I just wanted to give you all just a brief update on the drought and fire situation across the West. As we're going into the summer, we're seeing a bit of a different pattern due to our snowpack this winter than we're used to at this time of year. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Vicki, if you can enable that for me, maybe.
Okay. I made you a co-host. Okay.
Oh, that works. I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm
that's the only way I can do it.
Yeah. So here are the top line issues that I want to share with you. First is that drought is continuing across the Central Plains in portions of the northwestern U.S. And we actually see that continuing into the summer and expanding a little bit, especially in the northwestern U.S. and the Great Lakes region. The historic snowpack that we had in central and southern Rockies and in the Sierra Nevadas have really provided a lot of drought relief. And we're seeing very good fire conditions going into the spring with a caveat, and I'll share that with you in a little bit. That I said drought is expected to continue or worsen across the northwestern US and the Great Lakes region. We see high fire risk through this summer, focused on the Pacific Northwest and the Great Lakes, and the Southwest risk is near normal for this summer. And then just as an outlook towards the fall and winter, El Nino conditions are imminent here in the contiguous US and are likely to persist into this winter. What that tends to mean is a warmer than average winter conditions, warmer and drier up here in the northern Rockies, and a wetter pattern for the southern Rockies. We hope that continues. Having 2 wet winters back to back would be a real good thing, especially for the Colorado River Basin. This is the current drought picture. We see those really extreme and exceptional drought conditions across Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, and even over into Missouri right now. This is expected to actually get a little better as the summer goes on, and has gotten better throughout the spring as we've moved into summer. The solstice is tomorrow, but it is still exceptionally dry there. The areas that we're really concerned about at the moment are up here in the Pacific Northwest, where we've seen some expansion of severe drought, and then across the Great Lakes region and up into New England. And you can really see that. I'm not going to show this whole video. You know, this is my video I show every time going back to 2000. But if we just zoom through from this winter, we see how extensive drought was across the Great Plains region and over in the Southwest across Nevada. And then we really see that ameliorate super fast as we had that beautiful snowpack this winter. Still bad in the plains, but just over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've seen a vast expansion of drought conditions, even some severe drought conditions across the Great Lakes region in New England. And that is one of the biggest impacts that we're seeing right now. I always like to show, for those of us who are living in the West, just a depiction of where we are across all of our basins here in the West. And what we can see is that across all of our basins, drought is getting better, which is really nice. Even in that Arkansas White-Red River Basin, we see a decrease in those most extreme, in the proportion of the landscape that's under those most extreme conditions, moving towards the lower drought conditions and hopefully exiting drought fairly soon this summer. This is where, since the beginning of the year, what's been happening. We've actually seen there's all that relief. We've seen 4, 5 class improvements across much of the West, including California, Nevada, and Utah. Also, a lot of improvements across the High Line up in northern and northeastern Montana. So just great improvements. We've also seen areas of Texas and Oklahoma improve quite dramatically, and we expect that to continue. Part of the reason why we're seeing all these improvements is the high snowpack and relatively late snowmelt has led to really high soil moisture percentiles across the Western US. We see up here, I think the last time I spoke with you was in March, and there were some anomalies up here, but we weren't really sure because it was still pretty frozen up there. Now we're sure this is nice and wet up in the high plains, and then just beautiful wet conditions all across the West. However, what we see is these very anomalously dry soil moisture conditions across those central plains, and then really scary conditions emerging here in Michigan and up in New England. It's just a little picture of where we've been with El Niños since 2000. We've been in this long La Nina period, that's the blue down here, since 2020, late 2020, going through 21, 22, into 23. But now we're having a strong emergence, very rapid emergence out of those La Nina conditions. And here are the projections going out from May. These are this is a whole ensemble of different forecasts for INSO and where we expect it to go. Right here, this red dashed line is the boundary where we move from El Nino INSO neutral conditions up into El Nino conditions. And all of the models are in agreement that we're going to be moving into El Nino conditions imminently. So we're going to have a summer of El Nino and are likely to stay in El Nino conditions into the fall and winter of 2023. Our projections for drought, this is a 3-month forecast of drought conditions. We see that drought removal likely or remaining but improving across the Central Plains. That's great for the Central Plains. We see drought persisting or even emerging here in the Northeast. And then this is really the big story, is what we're seeing happen in the Great Lakes region and in that sort of eastern portion of the Midwest and then up into New England. We're seeing pretty strong drought conditions, drought development being likely, and worsening conditions. This is just so dry that it leads to pretty dangerous fire conditions across those regions. And that's really the big story that I have for you this week. Right now, our Southwest, we're looking good, below normal fire potential for this month, and some of that persisting into the summer. But currently, we're seeing high fire potential across Michigan. There's actually a fire burning in central Michigan right now. We've got several fires here in the eastern side of the Cascades, burning in Oregon and Washington. And those conditions will continue into the summer and in fact enhance as our summer goes long. This is looking at July. This is the wildland fire potential, again, above normal in the Northwest, above normal across the Great Lakes region in New England. Here we are in August, not much changes, just those big fires that created all of the impacts in New York and across the eastern seaboard were just up here in Ontario. So really just dry conditions across that region. And then maybe some relief as we go into September, but that's pretty far out for these types of predictions. There are a couple of tools that I want to bring to your attention that I've found really useful when tracking fire and smoke impacts on communities across the US and North America. One is the EPA's Air Now Fire and Smoke Map. If you pulled this map up, it's at fire.airnow.gov. if you pull that map up, you're not only seeing all of the EPA air quality monitors across the nation, but also all of the purple air, these low cost and yet high precision air quality monitors. And it's telling you a lot about where conditions are dangerous across the nation. It also has overlaid a representation of the smoke intensity across the nation. So you can really get a sense of where the fires are, where the smoke is going, and the impacts on local communities. Another one that I found useful, but this is a pay service, is on a website called Open Snow. They also have a smoke forecast product that they take current weather information and weather forecasts and give a forecast of where smoke is looking to intensify over the next 24, 48, 72 hours. So those two sites I find to be really useful, and I return to them throughout the summer. So again, drought conditions in the Central Plains and portions of the Northwest continue. They're expected to get better in the Central Plains and maybe get worse in the Northwestern US. They're also getting real bad in the Great Lakes region, and rapidly. Over the last 4 weeks, we've seen them go from no drought to D1, D2, severe drought conditions across that region. And because of that, we're seeing a rapid dry down of soils in those regions and a higher fire risk. So that's what I have for you today.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Any questions for Kyle before we let him go back to his vacay?
So one quick thing to remember, Kyle, I just got an alert this morning from the counties in around Truckee in the Sierra. So despite the high precipitation, they've had incredible intense winds and a huge growth of annual grasses. And so
Yes.
they have just announced a no prescribed burn in the areas because there's so much fuel from the grasses.
Thank you for bringing that up, Maureen. And that is one thing that I really wanted to mention. I've heard reports from friends down in Colorado as well, the exact same thing. We had a high snowpack. We've had a relatively mild spring, and it's led to really high undergrowth growth and in grasses, annuals and perennials. It doesn't matter. Everything's loving this weather. They've got a lot of moisture. If we have a rapid dry down or intense winds that can cause the same, then all of a sudden our fire conditions can really accelerate in the poor direction. So we're not out of the weeds yet, obviously, and we need to just hope that rain keeps coming, that we get our good normal monsoons, and that those conditions stay relatively suppressed. But you're right, we see a huge amount of fuel on the landscape because of those nice wet conditions that we experienced this winter.
Okay, one more question. Is excessive heat expected in the regions you've noted for drought?
Do you know, I haven't really done the full rundown in terms of what we're expecting in terms of temperature this summer. I did look this morning at some of the temperature maps, and I did see that the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, is showing above normal temperature across most of the nation this summer, going out the next month. That's pretty much as far as I'm willing to say with our temperature projections. But yeah, we've seen really hot temperatures. I mean, it's been hot up in Michigan. My cousin who's here is from Michigan. They've been having really, really warm weather. We're having a nice little cool down across the east just this week, but it's going to bounce right back, and we expect to see really hot temperatures.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that update, Kyle.
Thank you all.
Okay, for our first featured speaker, I'm going to turn the introduction over to Juan. Maybe and just quickly introduce who you are too for those that just got on, Juan. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Juan Ayos. I'm the Fur-Tip agent for San Carlos Apache Tribe. And today we have one of our speakers from San Carlos Apache Tribe Fire WISE program, Christine Thompson. She's in charge of prescribed burns on San Carlos Apache Indian Reservation, planning, implementing, and monitoring prescribed burns. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about the benefits and why they do it in San Carlos Apache tribe. Christine, you can start sharing your PowerPoint and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah. We can see it.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Thompson, and I work for the Fire Use Program under the Fire Resources. And I've been here working for the program for about 12 years now. And I'm the prescribed fire and fuel specialist for the San Carlos Apache tribe. And my presentation is going to be about the prescribed burns on the San Carlos Apache Indian Reservation, and what we do as far as like for planning, implementing, and monitoring prescribed burns, and what benefits we get out of it for treating the landscape with prescribed fire. Okay. Next. So this is just a short bio on my PowerPoint. Basically what I've just said earlier. I did add the monitoring part at the bottom because we do monitor our goals and objectives and if they're being met and how we can incorporate changes in the future, if there's any. So this one here is the biomes that we have on the San Carlos Apache Reservation. And our reservation encompasses approximately 1.8 million acres. And there are several biomes, as you can see, with the reservation boundary in the middle. And we have all the surrounding photos that depict where they're located. And we do have about around 7,202 tribal members. This was as of June 15. And these are exact numbers from the tribal enrollment. Okay. And this is another way of looking at the type of vegetation that we have on our reservation. We have 11 classes of vegetation. Most of the green that you see on the upper half is the forested area, and the yellows are all the pinyons and junipers. And you'll see some of the grasslands in the light colored, and some interior chaparral, oak woodlands. Sorry about that. And then we'll also have another map that shows our forest management units. We have a total of 5, and then we'll also have 11 livestock associations on our reservation. Most of our areas that we treat are up in the hilltop area, Ponum Pines and Maley Gap, and around the community with our wild and urban interface prescribed burns. And if anyone has any questions, just feel free to ask. And this one here is our treatment history that we have. This was created for our fire management plan that was approved back in 2015. So this data is from 2004 to 2015. And as you can see on the left side where it says wildfires by month, you'll see when our fire season starts in April, and then it really jumps up in May and June, and it starts to descend after June and July and August. And then on the map, you also see where all the yellow hashtags are, is where we had resource benefit burns in the past. And the red one are all the wildfires that we've had, and the blues are all the prescribed burns, and the purples are the thinnings that we've done in that's been done in the past by other departments here also. And then this next slide here is all our activities since 1997 to 2021. And you can see the difference between the two. If I go back to the other map, you'll see the reservation map there, and then you see it now. So there's a little bit more fires that occurred on the reservation between 2015 and 2021. And you can see on the resource benefit fires, it totals around 502,000 acres. Wildfire around 138,000 acres, prescribed burn 77,000 acres, thinning 17,000 acres, and commercial harvest around 34,000 acres. And you can just see the difference between 2015 and 2021. And then as far as for like planning and implementation, when we do prescribed burns, you know, first of all, we have to write burn plans and get them approved. And then we'll also have to come up with the costs, how much it's going to cost to implement the burn and our funding source. And we got a request for the amount through NFPORS, which is the National Fire Plan Operations and Reporting System that we have to put in our burn or any other kind of project. And there's usually costs attached to that. And then we'll also create our own maps using ArcGIS for prescribed burns and projects. We identify goals and objectives for the burn, and they have to be SMART. And then we schedule meetings ahead of time of the burn to plan for the meeting. And what time of year are we going to burn? Is it going to be spring, or is it going to be a fall burn, or during the winter? There's a lot of logistics that goes into this too. Where we're going to camp. Are we going to have cooks, or are we going to bring our own food? Do we have enough supplies? Do we need to order supplies? Do we have enough transportation, etc.? So logistics is always a big one for our burn, because we have like anywhere from 20 to maybe close to 40 people on a burn, depending on location too, if we have to camp out. And then the operational part of it, we also need to make sure that all the resources are available. Mostly the engines, like the wildland fire engines, the type 6. Sometimes we have to request for them from other agencies to come help us with our burn. And then what our needs are and what numbers do we have, and just on their availability for, say, like we're going to do a burn for 2 weeks, are they going to be available for 2 weeks? Or if we're going to burn from October through the end of November, are they going to be available for those 2 months? So those are some of the questions that needs to be answered and confirmed. And then we'll also assign a public information officer to help disseminate the information to our tribal leaders and the community and the public in general about information about prescribed burns. So there's probably other stuff that are out there that I didn't put in there, but these are kind of the major ones that really stick out in my mind that we need to have in place. So here's some photos that I took from our past prescribed burns. This was from the fall. On the upper left is the BS gap prescribed burn, and on the upper left middle is the Bullridge. No, that was the Anderson Flat prescribed burn, and the one in the middle with the smoke is BS gap, and the one on the far right with the utility pole is the San Carlos Wui prescribed burn. It's mostly mesquites and grass that are in the Wui, and we try to eliminate all the herbaceous grass, which is the main carrier of the fire in the community. And then the bottom left is just a person igniting a drip torch, just kind of visualizing what kind of fuels we have out here every year in the Wui. And then in the middle is just from Bullridge prescribed burn, and in the far right bottom is the Pono Pines Wui prescribed burn in the timber. Let's see. Here's some more photos of the pile burning that we do. This one here is at the burnt corral pile burning that we did 2 years ago. And then we'll also have the loafer pile burn in the timber that we did several years ago, and Anderson Flat pile burn also. So we do pile burns out here also, but not very often. These pile burns that we did are all in the woodlands. The juniper that we cut, we caught the slash on the stumps and we burned them for wildlife and to promote herbaceous growth of grass. And then here's just another some more photos of what we do as far as for brush management. This is part of burnt corral piles and Ponopine wood prescribed burn. You can see our John Deere tractor that has a fork that's connected to the bucket, and you have our bobcat that's piling the slash from what they had thinned. And then here's some benefits of the prescribed fire, that can result from treating the landscape with prescribed fire. The main thing for us is to make sure that we do reduce the fuel loading, and in turn that will reduce the wildfire hazard and prevent just negative effects caused from wildfires. But there's other benefits that you can see too, maintaining the forest health, improving forest structure and composition, recycling nutrient back into the soil, and just kind of mimicking that natural fire ignitions, minimizes fire behavior. And we'll always also think about the wildlife, because we do have a good game and fish department here that really are on top of their wildlife, especially for elk. We're kind of known for trophy elks out here and other wildlife, and we have people that come off the reservation that pay a lot of money to hunt on our reservation. But these are just some of the lists that I've identified of what benefits we can get from prescribed fire. And then we'll also do monitoring. We have a small crew of monitoring, but we also involve the whole crew, to go out there and collect data and to record them, before and after. For each burn, we got to determine how many plots we want to install in there, where they're going to be, and what kind of protocols we're going to use. And we use the fire monitoring integrated FFI plots, to do our analysis. We do pre and post fields data. And we also use if you guys use the IFTDIS interagency fields treatment decision support system, we use that to do other fields treatments and analysis. We monitor the weather, fire behavior, and fuel conditions. We collect fuel samples every month. And depending on where our projects are, or prescribed burns, if they're a candidate for the fuels treatment effectiveness monitoring, then we also include that in there. That's something like, say, if we do a prescribed burn out in the forest and we get a lightning strike and that fire burns into one of our prescribed burns, did it stop the fire? Did it slow the growth? Or, how did it interact with that treatment? So that's what we monitor out there also. And then just, taking care of the data, like the storage and doing data quality checks and data analysis. And then usually after each prescribed burn, there's a fire effects monitoring report that we do. There's times where we do have a female assigned to the burn, which is a fire effects monitoring person that records all the fire behavior, rate of spread, and weather. And we use, based off that information, we write our report at the end. And then something new that we're doing is the terrestrial LiDAR scans that we started last year for the shoe tank. That's something new that we're still learning, and we're still, getting the computers for it and the software in order for us to really look at our scans. But that's something new and it's in progress right now. Let's see. And here's another photo of what we collect out there. On the upper left, you'll see when the guys go out every month to collect field samples, they collect twigs, branches, leaves, 1 hour fills and 10-hour fills. You'll see some of the, like in the middle here, this was in the San Carlos weed prescribed burn. We have a lot of dry grass that come up every year, mostly in the same place. So every year we do the same prescribed burn in the same place most of the time. And then some of these are like before and after pictures from our prescribed burns in the timber. And you can see that most of the fuel has been reduced on the ground. So these are some good before and after photos. And these are all from our prescribed burns from last fall, except for the top 2 in the middle. And then here's another map, and the pink dot shows where we have all our monitoring plots. So you can see we have a whole bunch mainly on the north side of the reservation in Hilltop, Point of Pines, and Maley Gap Forest Management Units. A total of 430 plots in 23 locations. Most of them are FFI, but there's a few out there that we've done photo points for. And the data that we collect are plot description, tree data, field load, vegetation, and we take photos also in all 4 cardinal directions. Okay. And these are some of the species that I've listed, or that I have, or that we have in the San Carlos River and the Gila River that are federally protected and endangered. We have the willow flycatcher, the yellow-billed cuckoo. Those are the 2 main ones. And then we'll also have some riparian species, which are the willows, the cattails, and the conwood trees. And these are all important for traditional uses, for basketry, or for medicinal, or for traditional uses too. So we use all these plants that grow in the riparian areas. And here's another some more pre and post photos of fire effects on riparian plant species. And the photo in the middle that you see on the upper half is a fire in the riparian area. And these are the fires that we don't like to see in the riparian areas, because it really destroys the habitat and the ecosystem. You can see where on the upper left-hand corner, where you can see all the white ash where not a whole lot of vegetation didn't grow. On the bottom left, you'll see a willow that was growing here, but it all consumed at the base and they all fell down, but you can see them sprouting at the base also. And then the middle, you see where all the white ash, where we had complete combustion and a lot of heat there for a long duration. So not really a whole lot of grasses grew back there, but you can see all the other areas where you have all the black char is where most of the grasses came back. And same with the other 2. When the fire started, it was in the springtime, so the leaves weren't out yet. You can see it on the bottom right photo. And when the leaves came out later in the spring, and the water came back too. See.
Okay. Christine, not to rush you, we just have about 2 more minutes.
Okay. So here's another map that I've included. It's called the Wildfire Hazard Protection Map. This is a map that we also use to identify areas that needs to be treated with prescribed fire to lessen the effects of wildfire hazard. Yeah, but this is another map that I use too for long-term strategic planning and field treatment. And uses of fire in the past, we didn't start large-scale fires, and we didn't need to due to natural starts. And most of the fires that we used were mainly for small game and to herd animals into one spot, mostly to encourage small plant growth. Like I said, there's many traditional uses for our riparian species, and aside from cooking, warming, and light. And mescal and telegraph fire, we had those fires 2 years ago, and it happened in the springtime, and that fire really propagated a lot of wild species to respond. And the good thing about that was that after the fire was out, about a month later, we had a good monsoon season. So I think that really helped with the vegetation coming back. And then connection to ancestral lands, we live in a way to put light footprint on the ground, involves with the natural cycles of the world. We did little farming, but just enough to provide for our family and bands. We only harvested and burned what we needed, and try to balance the natural cycle. When you burn at the right time and you have the right weather coming in, you'll see stuff coming back, especially the medicinal plants and the local native plants. Future questions is just like, we have to, our accomplishments are reported in NIFPORs, and it's based on acres and funding. So, depending on how many acres we treat a year, say like 60,000 a year, I mean, is that really legitimate? Other thing we have to consider too is the high return interval versus what is best for the land. What if we burn 60,000 acres a year? Does that mean that it's best for the land? Or is it just in terms of acres and funding? Because I know acres is usually what NIFPORs looks at as far as what we get treat every year. And then, should it not be based on acres to burn by identifying how many acres need to be treated that are beyond the fire regime condition class of 2 and 3? Climate change effects on plants may be seen more evident in areas of ecotones. Is the vegetation going to shift? Are the animals going to relocate? Is there going to be decrease or increase in native species or invasive species? The changes with climate change and how it's going to affect fire regimes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was my last slide. So does anyone have any questions?
Let's hold questions till the end for both of you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Juan. Oh, sorry, Juan.
I said, thank you, Christine. Great.
Yes. Thank you
Okay.
so much. We'll do questions at the very end. Will that work?
Yeah.
Yeah, Vicky, do you mind if I drop some questions in the chat?
Okay, that's fine. And then, but will you please introduce our next featured speaker?
So I'll
I
use
will
the
indeed.
stop share.
Yes, please.
Stop share.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks. It's my pleasure to introduce Shinaasha P. Shinaasha, you're still on, right? There you are. Okay. Can you go ahead and share your screen and your video while I'm introducing you? Shinaasha is the restoration forester for Salish and Kootenai tribes in the Department of Natural Resources. And Shinaasha, we look forward to hearing from you. Shinaasha has been very active in the restoration of the White Bark Pine Project, but I asked her to talk a little bit about SKC's current plans for fire season. So take it away, Shinaasha.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Yep. Hey, hello, I'm Shinaasha Pete. I'm Navajo and Eastern Shawnee. I am the reforestation forester for the Confederate Salish Kootenai tribes here in northwestern Montana on the Flathead Indian Reservation. I am also currently running the White Bark Pine Restoration Management. And today, Maureen asked me, of course, to present. And as I said, my forte is White Bark Pine, but it has a good importance to it, especially for the fire seasons that we have coming up here in the future, definitely. So is that view okay for you guys there? Yes, good. Okay. So sowing history, growing culture, and planting language, where CSKT's White Bark Biocultural Restoration is what I'll be presenting with you folks today. I'll briefly go over our ecosystem management of white bark pine, emphasizing the CSKT culture, the beginning of our white bark pine restoration, along with our current methods that we're using for white bark pine restoration right now, and the CSKT implementing this management plan to move beyond our current and future obstacles, which all relates into fire for our white bark pine habitat here on the reservation. So white bark pine here on the Flathead Indian Reservation, just to give you guys a little history, that the Flathead Indian Reservation here was established in 1855, and we have 1.3 million acres that we manage with the tribe here, but the 256,000 of it is the forested acres that we will manage, and we do this year round as well. And 105,000 acres of this forest is the whitebark pine habitat. The whitebark pine habitat here on our reservation runs from 5,000 to 7,000 elevation, 7,000 feet, excuse me, 8,000 feet. It goes from the subalpine, lower and upper habitat types up to the timberline series as well here on our reservation. And the understory of it for the whitebark pine habitat is primarily huckleberry, but we have different various habitat areas within our reservation. So up on the northern part of the reservation, we're going to have more of the huckleberry series underneath with the vacciniums. But then when we go further down onto the southern part of the reservation, we have a rain shadow that comes over from the mountains to the west of us. So we have a lot more drier area where we'll have more of a false huckleberry. We'll get a lot of the the false huckleberry, Benzia figurina, excuse my Latin for those out there, but so this is just a brief though over our whitebark pine habitat here. So our ecosystem management of whitebark pine emphasizes the CSKT culture here. And these are just some pictures, some pictures here of the whitebark pine on our reservation. This one right here, we call the avatar tree. It has over 40 dBH on it. Right here, we have our Alalia tree, and this is our grandparent tree here. And this was carbon dated back from some of the pieces that we were able to pick up off the ground here. And they were going back to 1,500 years old. And then right here, this tree was one of my favorite that we found, and it's over 100 feet tall. So these are just some of the species that we're coming across here on a reservation for whitebark pine. So the CSKT culture here is really strong with their natural resource departments. We have primitive areas that we are not able to manage in, but we have a buffer zone that goes up. So we do a lot of management, but we're coming to find out that the stocks, of course, from fire suppression over years have becoming a threat to not just only whitebark pine, but also to all of the other species that are up in those high elevations. And as we see today, fire is coming into the later seasons. So for example, this year we're having a really rainy season and our vegetation is just so lush right now. And it's so green up here. But when fire season is going to be coming later into the seasons, as we're seeing, it's going to become a threat more and more to those species that we hold with cultural importance. The grizzly bear, the trout, and the tribes, though, continue to practice their cultural burning. And this is going to help, though, with our whitebark pine. And our whitebark pine restoration is a keystone species. Here, whitebark pine is a keystone species, meaning that it has over 123 different species that are reliant upon our ecosystem here. The reservation is also in the crown of the continent ecosystem, so the effects of it, losing whitebark pine here due to fire or the other ramifications that are out there with the pine beetle. Right now it is being eliminated out by the fungus white pine blister rust, and as well as fire suppressions and fire itself. But for the whitebark pine itself, this Clark's nutcracker bird is a keystone seed dispersal species for whitebark pine. So it's important that we keep the seed, or we keep the whitebark pine here, so we can keep the Clark's nutcracker within the habitat as well. But with whitebark pine, I always call it a double-edged sword, because without whitebark pine, without fire, whitebark pine is not able to come in and then regenerate itself. For these Clark's nutcracker, they're looking for these open areas that have previously had fire come through. And whitebark pine is a species that also comes up first from fire, from the, just totally drew a blank there. So after fire, when fire comes through, it's one of the seeds that are going to be coming up first. But the Clark's nutcracker here also has a significance to the tribe and to the stories of how this bird is going to be taking care of this tree throughout its life. And so now it is our turn as well to help this bird and to just continue to keep the culture going. So the beginning of our white bark pine restoration started back in 2018, and it started with a group called Map Monsters, to where we are going and actually scouting out the habitat for white bark pine and putting it into map series, and going across using our GIS and with our survey tablets on 123, if you guys are familiar with that, we were able to go and mark out our plus trees for white bark pine. A plus tree, to let you guys know, is a white bark pine that is showing a genetic resistance against the white pine blister rust. The white pine blister rust is, like I said earlier, the fungus that is taking out white bark pine across the continent pretty much. And it was established in 1910 when it came over up into British Columbia, and from there it had slowly made its way down into the States. And we have about 8% of white bark pine left on our whole continent, but yet there's about a 2% that is showing a genetic resistance now against this white pine blister rust that is eliminating it out. So it is important for us to go ahead and do our best efforts in restoring this tree here on the continent, but as well as mapping it out with the new technology that we're having today. Our tribe, we are working with LiDAR as well here, and with the efforts of that, it will be a lot more easier for us to get out there into these high elevations to scout out white bark pine a lot more quicker than out there kind of wandering around. No, we're not out there wandering around, but sometimes I can, because there's so many out there, and we have such a huge abundant amount within our habitat that it's kind of easy for me to get lost in white bark world out there. But with our CSK2 methods that we're going, we implement in there the college interns that we have, Salish Kootenai College here with the tribe, and that's how I started with white bark pine back in 2014 as an intern, and we've been working with it since every year over time. And we get interns. I'm trying to implement more programs that are reaching out for forestry recruitment, as well as the climate change that is coming, that is having effect with many of the different things here. But we have programs here with our climate change committee, climate change action committee, to where we have programs out there for high school kids as well, getting into more of the natural resource fields. And then with our fire as well, we have our own fire division here with CSKT Forestry, and helping them map out areas for white bark pine as well is going to have a lot more advantage for us when we go out there and collect cones, for instance, is one of the methods that we use for our restoration. But within our plan that we're doing with our strategies, we are trying to implement more prescribed burning up in those higher elevations, but it's tough because our window is so small for our burn time, and then the snow up in those high elevations. But the things that we're doing here for it is we are cone collecting, and we have certified climbers here with the tribe, and white bark pine cones grow at the very top of the tree here rather than being dispersed out throughout the pine like other conifers. So we have to have certified climbers to climb to the top, and they put these mesh cages there to where they're going to collect the cones and protect them from the squirrels and from the Clark's nutcracker that I shown to you earlier. And the cones themselves, they're a sealed cone, which I'm totally forgetting all my terminology here, sorry. But once they dry out, they will open up. And so we do have a seed extraction process that we go through, and we are planting our own seeds as well for contracting for BLM and for the Forest Service for white bark pine restoration. And we just now also broke ground for a whole greenhouse infrastructure that will be specifically for white bark pine seedlings that will hold up to about 120,000 of them. So yeah, we're excited about that. But here's just another one of our greenhouse establishments right here. We hold over 1 million seedlings right now with a full stock within our greenhouses. And we have these are our greenhouses, our larger ones are up north of our forestry offices, but here within our forestry offices outside, we have shade houses to where we also be growing native species that are here around the reservation, which would be, oh, here's our seedlings here. But yes, these aren't all white bark pine seedlings, may I tell you guys right now, but we do have an abundant amount of the different conifers that we are growing, from ponderosa pine all the way to limber pine, and whatever we can find out there for whatever contract that we have come through. We are always excited to try different things to plant. But with our restoration efforts and how we're going to implement them and move beyond these current and future obstacles that we have coming through with fire. So one of our main goals and with our fire, or excuse me, our forestry management plan is to take back our, we're working with the fire regimes. So we want to establish our fire regimes back to the pre-colonial time and establish that mosaic image that you see right here. So above is our Mission Mountains, and if you can see the pattern, like right now it's even more full, but these are just a good image here of the 80s, back in the 70s, 80s here, or see, excuse me, yeah, this would be back in the 60s, 70s, to where here this is in the 80s, and you can just see already the overstock of the forest. And with the fire suppression tactics that we're having out there, yes, they're great, but at the same time they're just having effect with the climate change, the diseases, the insects that are coming through. So with this, as I say, we are implementing back into our prescribed burning. And we have an excellent prescribed burning program here with the CSKT reservation, and talking with the constant communication that we have going with our the Forest Service and with the BLM, working together with different prescribed burns that we can do on the higher elevations on those borderlines of the reservation is something that we're looking forward into, and bridging those connections together to help establish more time for prescribed burning, but also just to protect the areas of white bark pine, and to also just eliminate the areas of encroachment within fire, not encroachment with fire, but the encroachment of species that are coming into different habitats from the climate change, and also for the protection of the WUI, as you guys, that's like one of the big policies or priorities is for WUI. But now that white bark pine has been moved up in December, it was put onto the endangered species list. So we're hoping that with that being on the ESA now, that it would become a priority. But with issues that we have found within our obstacles that we are finding is more with the fire mitigations, but with prescribed fire, one of the main goals also is to bring back our first foods. White bark pine is a first food, but also with the huckleberry and our camas and bitterroot, the prescribed fires, or the cultural burning, as we would call it as well, has been a big part of the CSKT culture here. So for which, that's why we're also emphasizing that prescribed burning is to bring back more of these cultural foods for the people. With that, we have learned practices of the different types of cultural burning that they have done in the higher elevations to keep these plants abundant and around. And over time, though, with the overstocks of the forest, though, as we said before, we're seeing the diseases coming in more and more. So just even to protect the cultural foods that we have here, but just our forests in general, and to keep those ecosystems and those fire regimes back, taking them back will just help prevent more of this type of what are these drastic things that are happening? So like right here is on this tree right here, it has been affected by the blister rust, but also beetles have came into this one as well. And this tree right here is the old white bark pine that has been completely eliminated out from blister rust. So when you're up in the higher elevations, you'll be coming across stands, just like huge stands that are just full of all of these skeleton trees, and we'll call them ghost forests. But this is our what we're trying to do more and more is to help restore this white bark pine so it will not have such a drastic effect once it's gone for all of the forest down below in the ecosystems down into like the valleys up here on the reservation. But like I said, it's because fires are moving into higher elevations here. I'm really glad that we're having a wet season this year to give us a little break here in the earlier summer from fire. But here was from 2021, the majority of our fires were in the high elevation. Last year, we had fires that were even in a higher elevation than this, to where we are losing those stands up there with white bark pine. But hopefully with our restoration efforts that we're going through and combining with the Forest Service and with the BLM as well, that we are going to be able to come through and reestablish these white bark pine stands in the ecosystem to, as I said, to keep our forests healthy and to have those sustainable, resilient white bark pine habitats with the seedlings that we are planting that have the genetic resistance against the blister rust. But as we see here, this is a Liberty fire that we had back in 2018. And as I said before, with white bark pine and fire being that double-edged sword, these are the type of areas though that we do need in those upper subalpine habitats to reestablish white bark pine. So in order for us to work together with fire and using that tool out there is definitely an importance for the culture here and for to establish back those fire regimes we are trying to get through harvesting, prescribed burning, and just with our management efforts as well here at forestry. But right here is a picture of this is Tony Kashola. He was our department head of forestry, but now he is in charge of all of our natural resources here for the reservation. And this is Carl Anderson from the Forest Service at Flathead Forest Service, above an hour north of us. But this little guy right here is the first white bark pine that was planted back in 2019. We have one plantation that is it's 10 acres now. The first time we planted over 1,500 seedlings of white bark pine that have the genetic resistance. And last year I added on another acre to that plantation with seedlings that are from here on our reservation, but do have the genetic resistance as well. And with these efforts, though, as I say, we are going to look to the future and to keep the forests healthy for the 7 generations ahead of us, as we always like to look at for our management practices and efforts. And the plantation that we planted back in 2019, these are the seedlings here, and they're sitting at a 90% survival rate today. And the goal is with our white bark pine also is to establish different plantations throughout the reservation in these high elevation areas that have been previously burned over as well from fires that are in those, like from the fires last year that hit in those high elevation areas that have the suitable habitat for white bark pine. But so these are just the obstacles that we are coming across with fire, but yet I will take it. And we are going to establish more white bark pine habitat across within those obstacles that we're coming with fire. And from there, we will succeed as our white bark pine seedlings are already doing right now. So, but thank you guys for listening, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Any questions?
That was wonderful. Maureen and I were just discussing we should have had a fire summer series, because both of those I could have listened to for the full amount. So both to Shinaasha and Christine, thank you so much. We are probably going to hit you up again and do it individually. Both projects, so interesting. Any questions?
That was fabulous, both of you. Thank you for sharing. And we wish you hopefully a calm fire season this year. And really, really interesting information. And Christine, thanks for the answering my questions in the chat. I'll follow up with you on soil moisture. Fabulous discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, everyone. And I love, Shinaasha, that you answered my question before I could ask it. I was so curious on the survivability of those seedlings. So 90%, I'm sure you saw me shaking my head, is just outstanding.
Yes.
It is, and it's going to be how long before they produce a cone?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was one of the an obstacle I guess we have is whitebark pine is a slow growth tree. So for them to even have a mature cone and seeds for them, it's about 60 to 80 years for a tree to to have to develop those seeds for us. So it's a race against time. For even when we have the seedlings, we're holding them 2 years in our greenhouses before we actually put them out there. So that's one of my goals as well, is to establish a outdoor greenhouse facility in a high elevation, so that way we can get the seedlings more, transfer them over to where they more have the adaptability within them, like the second year we could say, but also to keep our cycle going continuously with the new greenhouse that we have coming up. And with the greenhouse as well, that we have the seed lab that's going to be established in it with it, so that way we can continue to do more to help with the genetic testing, I should say, for the whitebark pine seedlings, to make sure that they do hold that genetic resistance. It's such a new thing right now that even with the whitebark pine team that I'm working with and have been working with on the recovery team since it's been on the ESA now, just with the genetics, it's still being still finding new things with it, I should say. And it's an amazing tree, I should say, for be up there in those high, the tenacity of it, just within the high elevations, harsh climates. Without it, their snowpack is going to be, the snowpack up there is going to be melted off more. So the erosion from it, the flood systems that would be coming down, is going to have effect from, maybe those little parasites that will be in the cold waters up in those high ecosystems, down to the birds or ducks that might need this certain type, it's like the effect of it from up top going all the way down is extreme, and we will see it once we lose it. And we could already be seeing it, but not knowing, just as over time, since these trees have been eliminating out slowly. But yeah, so the trees that we did plant, sorry, Maureen, for your question, but the trees that we planted in 2019, I figured it out, I'll be about 96 years old by the time I get to see them. So I told my son, yeah, you better drag me out here to go see those trees, wheel me around. But so it is an obstacle. It's a time that we are going to be working with. And like I said, with fire heating up and then increasing, it's the battle. But like I said, the double-edged sword, I'll take it, because we're going to need it in order for us to go ahead and restore the whitebark pine out there in those open areas that get burnt over.
Okay, we had a question. Did you mention who owns the nursery or greenhouses?
Yes, we do. I do. No, just kidding. No, we do. CSKT. Okay. CSKT, Confederate Sage Kootenai Tribes. We do that, and we do contract out as well. So, our greenhouse manager, Matt Ogden, he is amazing. And like I said, we're always looking for different ways or different things that we can trying different species that we could grow. And I see a question here. Sorry. It says,
okay. Yep.
Hazard impact whitebark pine the most. So against honest. So right now, the biggest impact for whitebark pine is the blister rust. So we were seeing, I have a stand that I was working in 2019, and I would update to it at the end of the season last year, and it's already been like taken out, like at least 80% of it has already been just immaculated out from the blister rust. So right now, that is our biggest fight is against the blister rust. And with the time to protect against it, there's nothing that we can do for the so when a tree is infected with the blister rust, we're seeing signs to where there are some trees that have pushed it out. We have seen to where, but when these trees do get infected, we have seen also where beetles come through. And when the beetle comes through, it will take it out just as quick as us girdling an infected tree or anything like that. But we don't want to do anything like that either, because even though the tree is infected, when it produces its seeds, that those seeds that come from that infected tree could possibly hold that genetic gene for the resistance against the blister rust. So it is a race against time. There's nothing that can protect them from the blister rust. There was a program once in the 80s where they tried to eliminate out all the ribes in the forest, because ribes was one of the main plants that carries the blister rust over. But even then, that right there, it didn't help it. So really, our best fight against the blister rust is just what we're doing, going out there, scouting trees, finding these trees that show genetic resistance, have any of signs of them. So with my small window, I'm out there, amongst climbing, getting my climbers out there to get up the trees to collect the codes, but also I have to get out there and make sure that I scout and see what trees that are truly showing genetic resistance against them. For instance, I had some trees that I considered plush trees, but then over the past 3 years, they start to show signs. So it's like, okay, well, now I just got to keep track of that tree, monitor it, see if it ever pushes it out, see if it gets more infected, keep collecting from it. But at the same time, I still need to get out there and go scout trees that do show true signs of the resistance. And how I do that is sometimes I'll just look for the stands of complete skeletons, and I will see trees, I'll see a stand that is completely wiped out, but I'll have one bushy, just healthy looking white bark. And that right there is a prime, that is a plus tree. And knowing that that tree right there is a plus tree, I know that within that area, there's going to be regeneration naturally from it. And and also with those Clark's nutcracker, they fly within a 60-mile rate, like a mile radius for when they plant their seeds. And what's amazing about them too is they can plant over over 10,000 seeds, and they'll remember like 98% of them where they are. And so that little 2% that they don't remember or that they can't get to, those are the regeneration that we're having for whitebark pine. So it is very important for us to put in our efforts to help those birds get the whitebark planted once again. And it's what I continuously share with the people around here when I go into classrooms and present, and that the cultural significance of it for whitebark pine, as well as aside from it being a first food. But if we lose whitebark pine, we're going to the culture here is going to lose the word for whitebark. You lose the word, you're going to lose the story. With the story, you're going to lose those the values and the morals and values and ethics that you're going to learn through our traditional oral history and culture that we always share amongst our with our youth and within these cultures. So and that's not even just with whitebark pine either, it's just with all animals and plant species, within tribes around the world. You could even say that if you're going to lose those plants and those trees and those animals, you're going to lose those words and you're going to lose those stories. And so for which that's why I call it biocultural restoration as well, is because I'm not only helping restore whitebark pine, but also I'm helping it make sure and keep the culture restored as well and bringing it back.
Okay, we have a question from Juan.
Yeah, I know that Maureen was going back and forth with Christine about the missile net station. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that and how that can benefit both the programs that are presented today?
Yeah.
Usually will have 20 people under him. And for the other field techs, one is in charge of the fire effects monitoring, and the other one is in charge of all the heavy equipment for all our thinning and brush management, which consists of 2 people for the equipment operator and the mechanic. And then for the monitoring, we have a lead assistant and a crew member that does the monitoring. But at times we have to incorporate our crew to help with the monitoring to get it done as soon as we can. So programs every year. So we do lose some, and then we do gain some through hiring too.
Excellent. Thanks, Christine. I know
Yep.
it's a challenge to get people into the business, and I'm glad you're able to do some good recruiting. Vicki, back to you.
Okay, sorry guys, I'm having internet issues. My internet was out 2 days last week, so reservation wide. But anyways, okay, well, with that, I just want to thank both of our speakers today. It was amazing. Like we said, we could just sit here for hours, I think, and discuss these projects. So we will definitely do some more on this. It's obviously a very important topic to all of us, especially during fire season. So with that, I want to thank everyone for being on and sticking it out with us, especially our speakers. We will be on summer break, and we'll see you back here September 19th.
And we'll post the video probably early next week.
Correct. Yeah, Kelsey's on vacation right now. So, and Maureen, will you save your chat for me? Because mine got erased when I lost connectivity.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and then I'm going to stop the recording.